Sure. Laura is the president and CEO of Habitat of the Charlotte region. It's grown tremendously even since I've been involved the last 10 years or 10 or 12 years. And anyway, Laura graduated with a business and accounting degree and has worked in banking in many years before joining the arts and science in 2005 and becoming chief financial officer and chief operating officer. In 2014, she joined Habitat for Humanity as president and CEO, where she has come to see the work as more of a calling than a job. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Laura Belcher to talk to us about Habitat.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That's on there, right? Okay, good. Thank you for inviting me to be here, Gerald, and I really want to come from a place of gratitude first for the longtime relationship that we have had with this church, and all the projects that we do together. And so, Charlotte Church Partners working on this house out in Hope Springs is an important thing. The generosity of this congregation for the Easter offering also is advancing Habitat's mission work through our critical home repair program. And so we've got a long time relationship that I don't take for granted. I appreciate it. And I want to start from a place of thank you. Many of you probably know a little bit about Habitat. Is that fair? I'm seeing everybody's nodding ahead. Okay, good. So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna give a little bit of information about Habitat. And then, as I said when I was coming in this morning, this is a little bit of an unusual talk for me, because usually I just talk about Habitat and I can do that for hours and days. But I was asked to get a little bit personal in this one, so you're going to get a little glimpse of me too. So I'm going to try and talk a little bit about that as part of the series that you all are going through, and I'll talk a little bit about my work as an offering and seek some of your thoughts there too. This is going to be more fun for me if you ask me questions as we go. So don't hesitate if I say something and you're like, I don't understand that, or why is that important? Please stop me. So let me start with just a little bit about Habitat, right? So most people know Habitat, and they know that we build homes and we sell them to families that have low income and can't afford to purchase a home on their own. Habitat is part of a global nonprofit. So Habitat International is a global nonprofit, and we have a global vision, which is a world where everyone has a decent place to live. That is a unifying vision for us. There are close to 1,000 habitats in the United States, and we operate in 70 countries around the globe, and we all have the same vision. And so that's unifying for me. And then our mission statement is to put God's love into action by bringing people together to build homes, community, and hope. So when I first was exposed to this mission statement, there were a couple of things that struck me. One is I liked it because it was short and I could memorize it. Right? It's not 4 paragraphs. You've seen some 4-paragraph mission statements before. I thought this one was also really intriguing, that I was going to have a mission that said that it was my job to build hope in this world. That is both really inspiring and very intimidating. To wake up every day and feel like my job is to help build hope in this community, when sometimes there's a lack of hope. And then seeking to put God's love into action as the start of our mission statement is affirming and intimidating at the same time. And sometimes in certain places, we'll just say that our mission statement is to bring people together to build homes, community, and hope, and we'll skip that starting part. But it's so important that it really is who Habitat is, and to be part of a faith-based organization. So we're not just a nonprofit, but we're a faith-based nonprofit. And that is a different beast a little bit in making that my career and things. So when we think about what makes an organization, a faith-based organization, different, it's some of its core values. And so when I think about Habitat Charlotte Region's core values, our first one is faith-inspired inclusion. So everything we do is based on Christ's example of inclusion. So while we are faith-based and anchored in our Christian roots, we don't use that as a litmus test for anything. we don't use that to exclude anybody. We will partner with every family, we will work with every volunteer, we will hire every person. So it is not a exclusionary piece of our mission, it is the basis of inclusion, and that's what I love about it. There's an old spiritual that talks about draw the circle wide, and if anybody's on the outside, draw it wider still. So maybe you heard that one, maybe, or, I feel like that's what Habitat tries to do. We draw the circle as wide as we can. Engage as many families as we can, as many volunteers as we can of all walks and privileges. And then if anybody's on the outside of that, we draw the circle wider. And so that's how I have approached this intersection of faith and my work and working in a faith-based institution. So it's not just that it's a nonprofit, but it's a faith-based institution. So Habitat International began in 1976. It originated out of Americus, Georgia. And the story is, and it was not founded by Jimmy Carter, in case anyone thought that. He has been our greatest ambassador for sure. But it was founded by this couple here, Millard and Linda Fuller. Anybody here meet the Fullers or know the Fullers? You met the Fullers? Really powerful life story of how they came to start Habitat. And I think it's part of our DNA to acknowledge it and to remember it and to acknowledge it and to embed it. So Millard and Linda, as I understand it, as the story goes, Millard was a really talented entrepreneur, businessman in New York. And he set a personal goal to raise to earn $1 million before he turned 30. And this would have been, in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And he accomplished that goal. He was successful and raised a lot of money, earned a lot of money, and realized it did not bring him joy. And he and Linda almost split up over the material approach of their lives. And so they decided they needed to do something drastic to change it, and they gave away their monetary activities. They moved to Georgia, to Americus, Georgia, and also went and spent some time over in Africa and spent some time learning about how to care for others and live in community with others, and looked at housing needs in Africa, and then brought some of that concept back to the States and started Habitat for Humanity in an effort to provide better housing for those in need. And so it started in a mixed race commune in Americus, Georgia, in an effort to heal interracial challenges and to address housing needs. And so that's the DNA that Habitat started in, and that's what I stepped into when I joined Habitat 12 years ago. So that history, that faith is really important, and it's part of something that we talk to all of our new employees about. So they have an understanding of where we've come from and let that inform where we go. Habitat International will be turning 50 years old, right? So we started in 76 out of Georgia. And there's a lot of research that shows that faith-based organizations, after about the year 50, lose their ties to their faith, and they become more secular. And they believe they have to step away from it to keep their fundraising going, to be able to really appeal to different opinions and things like that. So Habitat, for the last 10 years, knowing that our 50th anniversary was coming up, has been very, very intentional to talk about God at the center. And how do we keep God at the center and still be relevant in this very, kind of pluralistic and challenging environment that we operate in, right? So how do we have a faith-based organization that doesn't polarize anybody? And I think, to me, it's really trying to lean into that inclusionary approach. But it is part of the conversation that we're having with Habitat International is having nationally, is trying to be intentional that we don't lose our faith-based ties like so many other organizations. Many nonprofits that are 100 years old today, when they started, were faith-based, and today would be seen as secular. And so we're trying to balance what our future holds. So let me, so that's a little bit on the history of the Habitat stuff. So let me talk a little bit about my path to getting to a faith-based organization, because it was not a direct path. So you heard in my bio, I started in college as an accounting major. and I'm a CPA by training. And so I came out of school and I came to Charlotte and I went into public accounting. And did that for nearly a decade. And then I worked in financial services because it's super easy in Charlotte to get a job at a bank at some point, right? And so at some point, so I worked in financial services for almost 20 years as well. Some mergers and acquisitions. I just kind of sat at my desk and I kept changing my business card, right? And was actually doing pretty well. Actually had a little bit of a crisis of consciousness in the late 90s. I got promoted and received a corner office and a compensation that I was not prepared to deal with, and actually sought advice and counsel from my minister on what to do with that. And they said to live my best life and share my gifts and talents. And if it rewarded me financially, then it was my calling then to have to share that with the world. And so that's when I actively started stewardship at my church. I am a lifelong Presbyterian. I go to Covenant Presbyterian. So, but stewardship really was, that was a wake up call for me on stewardship, was that it was okay to be successful in my career as long as I was willing to share it, and to share it abundantly. And then, so I'm 20 years into my career and I'm doing really well. And I am one of the victims or beneficiaries, depending on how you look at it, of a corporate merger buyout. And I have an option. I can decide, do I want to continue in corporate or do I want to do something else? And I was thinking for sure corporate, right? I'm a CPA, I'm going to go corporate. And I had two different people in my lives that didn't know each other call me and tell me that there was an opportunity at the Arts and Science Council. And when two different people call you that don't know each other, so they weren't conspiring, you should pay attention, right? And so I paid attention. I had an opportunity. I went and I talked to Lee Kiesler. Lee and I decided that I would join Arts and Science Council as the CFO, and then became their COO, and then did national fundraising. And so I was there for almost just over 9 years. But that was not my plan. My plan was not a mid-career transition from a corporate kind of flourishing role to a nonprofit where I did talk to my financial advisor and say, I just want to make sure I don't have to sell my house. Like if I take this job, I just don't want to have to sell my house. It was a different financial lifestyle, but it was moving to a mission-based lifestyle. And I'd always thought that at some point in my career, I would work for the community. I just didn't know what it was going to be, right? But when those opportunities come along, sometimes they're limited, so you got to jump on them when you can. So I did, and I was with the Arts and Science Council for a great part of that career. But I knew it was also time to leave. And I also knew that I had no idea what to do next, right? And so I leaned back into and onto my faith, and one of my very favorite passages from Jeremiah 29:11. You probably all know this one, right? For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. So I didn't know where I was going, but I knew it was time to go. And so I had to kind of walk that tightrope of where am I going to go and what am I going to do and what feels right. And this passage is particularly meaningful to me. We sing it at Covenant every single Sunday. It's our exit music. So every single day as we go out into the world, I leave with this, knowing that the plans are there for me to prosper, not to harm me. And so that gave me the faith to be able to be open to my next calling and my next opportunity, which was to join Habitat. So I got a call from a headhunter. They said, would you like to interview for the CEO job at Habitat? And I had been approached about some other leadership positions in town, and I kind of turned them down. They weren't speaking to my heart. But when this one came across, I was like, oh, yes, I do want to be a CEO, but it had to be for the right organization. And Habitat was it. I had been volunteering on and off for 17 years building houses with Habitat. I had done a little bit of everything. I've done framing, I've done roofing, I've done drywall, I've done it all. My favorite is siding. And not everybody likes siding. In fact, I have some people when they volunteer say, I'll do anything but siding, right? But I like siding because it's a puzzle, right? You have to think 3 and 4 pieces ahead because you don't want the seams to overlap and you don't want the seams to fall under a window. So you gotta strategize each layer, where's the seam gonna go? And I gotta cut out for the dryer vents and I gotta cut out for this. So I like siding because it's a puzzle. I also like siding because most of the time, the homeowner has had a voice in the color of their home. And when we put siding on, it goes from being a construction site to being their home, right? It's the first time that something personalized is coming in and you know, changing the nature of it. So I joined Habitat in 2014. Just see here, what else have I skipped on my note cards? You know, and when I told, I didn't tell a lot of people I was interviewing, because, you know, you don't want to admit something if you don't get it, right? Yeah, so for a lot of folks, it was a shocker, you know, it's like, oh, I've got this job now, I didn't even know you were looking. But and I like to think of myself as sometimes a smart person, but all of my friends and family were like, this job was made for you, Laura. Like, on paper, this job is the right job for you. And I was like, well, if I'd have been a little smarter, I would have realized that after 17 years of volunteering. And my path might not have, you know, whoops. Oh, I can't go backwards there. My path might not have looked like this if I'd known exactly that I was gonna be the CEO of Habitat, right? I would have maybe done some things differently, like maybe get a little more knowledge on construction, because I didn't have a lot. Or understand the mortgage industry better, which I did not understand until I got there. But I got the opportunity to join Habitat, and took the leap. And so I remember, the first week I had, they said, you're going out to a house dedication. And I thought, this is why I took this job. I mean, this is it, right? I'm gonna meet homeowners, I'm gonna give away keys, this is gonna be the most amazing thing to be able to work on this job, and do that. And then I saw the program. The program said, Laura Belcher, CEO, Habitat Charlotte, will open us in prayer. And I went, what? What? Oh my gosh, I thought about putting a picture here with my hair on fire. I thought, wait a minute, I'm worried about trying to understand what's a mortgage and how do I build? And what they want me to do is prayer. They want me to pray out loud. And I already told you, I'm a lifelong Presbyterian. Like, you know, just saying that makes my hair stand out. I was in a study group a couple weeks ago with a minister in town, a Presbyterian minister, who said, when he says something and somebody goes, that's a Presbyterian amen. Like, you know, I mean, we're just proud our faith sometimes, right? And so this idea that I'm going to, in my 4th day on the job, pray in front of other people, I'm like, wait a minute. And I thought, I didn't think that it was gonna be so hard to be part of a faith-based institution. I thought, because I'd grown up in the church and I'm an elder and I've done all the things and all that kind of stuff, I thought marrying up my work and my faith was gonna be easy. And it wasn't. Because so much of our careers, we separate our faith and our career. Like, you know, I didn't run into Interstate Johnson Lane when I was in the brokerage firm and talk about the sermon from Sunday. I talked about it with my people that I went to church with, but I didn't talk to people at work about it. So that marrying up of faith and work was new and it was scary. And so, you know, I loved handing over keys, but I didn't really love having to pray. But I have come to, now it's taken almost 12 years, but I have come to really appreciate the opportunity to marry up faith and work. And that we open our meetings and our board meetings and our staff meetings with prayer and devotion and the centering that that brings before we get down to business. We've got hard work to do. You know, affordable housing is not easy work. It's not for the faint of heart. And so being able to anchor and center and pray before we work is a gift. But it was really scary at first. And still oftentimes can be very scary. What did I do?
Thank you. Okay, try it again.
There we go.
There we go. So when I did get to Habitat, and like I said, my friends and family all saw that it was a natural fit. This idea of marrying up your work and your life's purpose. You know, Buechner says it this way: your vocation in life is where your greatest joy meets the world's greatest need. And I know I'm lucky. Not everybody gets to do that. Not everybody gets to marry up their career and their personal passions. You know, I said I'd been volunteering with Habitat for 17 years. I'd also gone to Mexico and built homes with my church. I'd gone to Kenya and built schools. Like, that was who I was in my discretionary time, and the ability to marry up what I like to do in my free time with my career was amazing. And it's a privilege and a gift. And I know that not everybody gets to do that. But I think that part of thinking about, you know, your series and work as an offering is to think about it. It doesn't always just have to be the job and the paying job, right? So I found this, right? Where you've got the intersection of a calling, which is doing work that is meaningful and matters to you and fulfills your potential and makes a difference. And then you've got the things that people are going to pay you for on the other side. And if you're lucky enough, like I was, you get a vocation in the middle. But that big piece on the left is huge. That calling and the work that you do and the work that you're called into doing, I think is really important, and doesn't have to be a vocation. It still is the work, and that is the offering, that is the opportunity to be made. You know, when I think about you know, kind of that journey and that path and how I got here, I do remember a college professor. So when I'm, you know, studying accounting, and a lot of people are like, well, you know, I didn't even know what accounting was. When I took it, I was just like, oh, well, I know I like math, so I'll take accounting classes and see what I do. And then, so this accounting teacher that I had was talking about, again, how to take your skills, my accounting skills, and marry them up into a life that could be full of passion and joy and things like that. And so she talked about accounting plus, and she challenged us all throughout that semester to think about where could I do accounting in a place of joy. And her point was, if you love horses, then go be an accountant in Kentucky on a horse farm. And if you love photography, go be an accountant at a photography magazine. And if you're really intrigued by healthcare and you know, trying to do cancer research, be an accountant for a healthcare industry. And so it was really intriguing to me, and it has left an impression on me that we can take our gifts and talents, whatever they are, accounting, law, education, and marry them up with passion, right? Like, work doesn't have to be drudgery. Work should be a gift. What we do that is part of the paying work, and the work that we do that is part of our calling, all should be faced with joy. And so as I was thinking about that, I thought about kind of the sharing of gifts and talents. And I thought about the Duomo in Milan. Anybody been to Milan? Yeah, anybody been to the Duomo? Yeah, right. So when I first was going to Milan, and somebody said, well, you got to go see the Duomo. And I said, great. And they said, you're going to spend all day there. And I said, I'm going to spend all day at one church. That's not what I'm going to do. Sure enough, I spent all day at the Duomo. I mean, it's stunning. It's beautiful. God spared it from World War I and World War II. It is stunning. So here are my fun facts, right? The work began in 1386. It was not ruined by the world wars. It has 135 spires and 3,400 statues. So I was there 3 years ago, like 2 weeks ago. So it's just 3 years ago. But the thing that most impressioned on me was when this was built in the 1300s and the 1400s, the 1500s, 1600s, and 1700s, there were no elevators to get you to the top. So there's 3,400 statues on the roof. For who? Who's going to see them? And the concept that they shared with me while I was there was these amazing artists from all over Europe, mostly in Italy, were called to make amazing art for the roof of the Duomo that no one would ever see. It was their best work, their life's creation, but for God's eyes only. Right? And when I think about work as an offering, and I think about the Duomo, and I think about these artists. There's no elevator. Now there's an elevator. You can go to the roof, you can see it, right? And they're stunning. I mean, just stunning work up the top. But when they built it and when they did it and they did their work and the artist showed up with their spire and their statue and they handed it over, they knew no one was going to ever see it again. They didn't do it for that glory. They did it for God. And so when I was thinking about this opportunity to spend some time with you guys today, I kept coming back to this, that work is an offering. Whether it's the work that you paid for, the work that you're not paid for, but it's taking your gifts and talents and using them in a way that beautifies the world. So if you haven't been to Milan and you haven't been to the rooftop of the Duomo, I would highly recommend it. You can see some of the work that was done by these amazing artists. So the other thing I'll do is this was a gift to me when I was in 1981, but it has moved with me all around. And so from time to time, I go back to it. So when I was thinking about work as an offering, I went back to see what did the book The Prophet have to say about work. And I'm not going to read you the whole chapter. If you're interested, you can grab it. But as usual, there were a couple of things in here that I thought were important. And it's at the very end that this quote comes up, right? That work is love made visible. Which sometimes I think we think of work as a 4-letter word. But work is our opportunity to live that out and to share that with God. So it says here, work is love made visible. And if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms from those who work with joy. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, your grudge distills a poison in the wine. And if you sing, though as angels, and love not the singing, you muffle man's ears to the voices of the day and the voices of the night. And so trying to find joy and love in the work that we do, whether it's paid and becomes a vocation, or it's unpaid and so sharing of gifts and talents, I think that work is an offering, is an important thing. All right, I rambled for a while. What questions do you have? Did you want to hear more about Habitat? Did I surprise you with anyone? What can I talk about?
So I'm personally a big fan of Jimmy Carter, but my question is, because Jimmy and Rosalind were so active in Habitat, was that like a good thing for the organization that y'all had that spotlight?
Yeah, absolutely. I think President and Mrs. Carter were amazing ambassadors for Habitat. And so Habitat started in 76. Habitat started in Charlotte in 83. In 1985. Maren thinks that she knows what I'm going to talk about. In 1985, President and Mrs. Carter were intrigued by Habitat in New York City. And so they worked on a build in New York City in the mid-80s. And they spent a week, which was kind of unheard of for somebody of their stature to get their hands dirty for that long, right? Maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, but for a whole week. And as the story goes, they slept on the church basement floor and didn't want to be separated or different from anybody else. And it was such success that they did that again in 86. And then in 87, they came to Charlotte. And we hosted the Carter Work Project in 87. Any of you work on the 87 Carter Work Project? Yes, see, good. In Optimus Park. And so that started their kind of lifelong commitment to Habitat. And I don't think anybody could have done more for Habitat than President and Mrs. Carter did. They did a week-long build around the country, around the globe, from the 80s all the way until 2019. 2019, they did the build in Tennessee, in Nashville, and they announced that they were going to retire from public life. And we all said, you're welcome to do that. They were in their early nineties at that point. They'd earned the right to retire. And so they retired from public life in 2019. Habitat Charlotte Region was honored to be able to host the Carter Work Project again in 2023. So it only took us 36 years to get it back. We're hoping to get it back sooner than that in the future. And we built out at the Meadows at Plato Price. We worked on 27 homes with 800 volunteers a day. It was the first build post the retirement of the Carters, because then you had this little interruption with COVID. We were proud and honored to be the first one back post the COVID break, and the first one to host without President and Mrs. Carter, and show that the energy for Habitat was still there. So I think that their legacy and their endorsement of the work that we do is amazing. I think their commitment to show up and do it physically, not just lend their name. Lots of celebrities are willing to lend their name or show up for, a meet and greet and a handshake and a lunch, but show up for a week at a time and demonstrate what putting God's love into action really is. Back to our mission statement, putting God's love into action. I think that President and Mrs. Carter demonstrated that better than most anybody else in a public life. So I think they were very helpful to Habitat's growth.
Laura, may I add something? Their children came and worked on that project.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it's, excuse me, when they were here, I was very active involved in Queens.
Yeah.
And they stayed at Queens and in an un-air conditioned dorm. So we wanted to put the air conditioning in it in Rosalind Jimmy's room. He said, absolutely not. If everybody can't have them, I'm not having them either. So they didn't. And then we had one dinner here for them, the whole team, and some other people came. We filled up our old fellowship hall for a dinner for him. And he announced while he was there that if anybody wanted to jog with him the next morning, he's gonna be here at 6 o'clock and jog to the work site. I was at that time running and I came. Jimmy and Rosalind and all the Secret Service, and they were so nice. There were a few of us that did. Susan Williams at the time, now Schultz, did also, but they were so nice, and they'd run by each one of us and talk to us, talk about running with Carter and what I could say. And I, gift of gab, no telling what I could say, but
Well, and as and I was not on the 87 work project, but I've heard lots of good stories, and I hadn't heard the jogging one, so I'm gonna put that one in my memory bank. But Amy Carter was here as well, and she was at the hotel doing homework or whatever. She wasn't on the job site, but she had a case of appendicitis while they were here in town. But Jimmy was so competitive, and his house was not getting done as fast as some of the others, and so he had Rosalind take Amy to the hospital, and he said, well, call me when she's out of surgery. I gotta keep building. He's very focused on getting that house done, and very committed to that. Yes.
I thought your description of comparing the work life, your passion and faith is, I'm not a way I've heard about it before. I wonder if you've had the opportunity to share that with young people, teenagers, thinking about, I know probably not time for motivational speaking. But I wonder what reactions you've seen.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I have not had a lot of opportunity or invitation to spend time with teenagers and high school. I have talked a little bit to Habitat has a group called Habitat Young Professionals. We call them the HYP, for folks kind of under the age of 40. And so I have had the opportunity to talk to them as they're looking at their careers and trying to navigate. I've had that conversation a lot with my nephews and trying to get them launched and understanding that it doesn't have to be a straight line, and the next step may not make sense to you in the moment, but it will make sense in the long run. But I have not talked to high schoolers about that. Interesting.
How challenging is it to acquire sites to build on in today's market?
Yeah, so the question is around land and acquisition of land. It's a real challenge. Folks ask me if we are out of land in Mecklenburg County. I would say we're not out of land in Mecklenburg County right yet. We are out of flat land. which makes it really expensive to develop, when you look at having to put in retaining walls and things like that. We are doing more and more light density builds. So the one that I showed you that we started with, is kind of the traditional single family home. But we're doing more duplexes, triplexes and townhomes because of the, how difficult it is to find land. But we're out shopping for it all the time, and trying to see what we can do.
If you could tell the story about this particular piece of land out at Hope Springs, I think that's an interesting story.
Yeah, absolutely. So, those are some of our new builds. So the land that Charlotte Church Partners that you all are building on right now, is in a neighborhood that's called Hope Springs. And it was intentionally named that because of its tie to, faith-based institutions, right? So, a couple of years ago, I got a phone call from the pastor at Greater AME Zion Church, who said, and his church is way out the, plaza. And he said, we own 9 acres in Northwest Charlotte, that we don't want anymore, and we're trying to sell it to the highest bidder. And I almost cut him off and said, we will never be the highest bidder. And what he said was, we've been trying to sell it to the highest bidder. And we keep getting bids and we keep getting ideas, and they all don't feel right in our gut. And the way he described it, and we've got it on film, is that he and his 5-year-old were walking the land one Sunday after church. And he felt called to reassess what it meant to sell it to the highest bidder and instead sell it to the highest cost. And as a small church, they were not in a position where they could donate the land. It was too valuable. And so what they did is they said, we owe $450,000 on our sanctuary. Could you just pay off the note on our sanctuary and we'll give you 9.5 acres
Oh, my gosh.
in Northwest Charlotte. So it's an amazing gift of love and joy, for a below market sale like that. And then to bring it full circle, I then called a minister in town of one of the large churches and said, hey, I understand that you've got some leftover funds from your capital campaign, that you're looking for an interesting project. How would you like to fund the acquisition of the land? And so we had a church give us the cash to be able to buy the land from another church to be able to build Hope Springs. So it's a great story, full circle for that neighborhood. And so I think that is holy ground that we are building on.
And appropriate that the church partners is building it.
I couldn't be happier. The church partners is building out there for sure. So that'll be 28 families. We've got a mix of 1-story and 2-story. This neighborhood concept that we used to kind of do one-off homes, but this neighborhood concept that we've moved to really allows us to do what I call placemaking. So we could really think about how we're going to lay out the houses. How are we going to make sure that the neighborhood feels integrated and tied together? How's it going to have good visual appeal? And so mixing up the 1-story and the 2-story, each of the fronts has different front porches, different columns. Some have bricks, some have stone, some have siding. So, just different colors, visually appealing, visually creative. So that sense of placemaking is really important when we can do a neighborhood as opposed to just dropping in a home.
Could you talk about, because I'm not that familiar with this part of it, and I always like the specifics of how does someone come to you?
Yeah.
You're doing all these wonderful homes, but how do you find the people that end up, and do they purchase them? Do you help with the financing? Does the bank help with the financing?
Yep.
And who ends up there and how does that happen?
Great question. So the families that we work with apply to us. We say that there's really only 3 criteria to be a Habitat homeowner. They're big criteria, but there's only 3. The first is a need for housing. Unfortunately, in Charlotte, that is really a easy barrier to get over. So we've defined a need for housing if you are in cost burdened, overcrowded, or substandard. And there are lots of people in one or multiples of those types of definitions. The definition of cost burden is if a household is paying more than 30% of their housing for 30% of their household income on housing. Right, so if they are spending 50% of their household income on rent, then they are considered cost burdened. So standard, you understand, overcrowded is really is about how many kids do you have in the bedroom? Is mom sleeping on the couch because the kids are in the bedroom? You know, those kinds of things. So number one is a need for housing, and they can apply, and we'll assess that. Number two is an ability to repay the mortgage, because yes, we sell the home. So we don't give the home away, but what we do is we right size the mortgage for what that family can afford. Right? So what we do is say, again, your housing cost shouldn't be more than 30%. And so if the family can only afford a mortgage of X, then we right size the mortgage, regardless of the cost of the build. But in order to take on a mortgage, you have to be mortgage ready, right? And so we have on our staff mortgage underwriters. And so we're looking at, income history, debt qualifications, all of those things to make sure. The last thing we want to do is put somebody in a home that they can't afford and that they won't be able to thrive, right? And so we are working closely to try and find those families that have enough income to be a mortgage holder, but not so much income that they could be served by the marketplace. So we're kind of looking for that needle in a haystack, middle, low wage earners, but not too much debt. And then again, in this community, that is hard to find. But that's the second one. So first one is need for housing. The second one is ability to repay the mortgage. Third one is a willingness to partner with Habitat. And that's important because not everybody wants to go through the program, but our program involves a fair amount of financial education to ready somebody for homeownership, to participate in actually coming out and building and understanding and getting appreciation for both the build process and the volunteer engagement. So they understand how the community supported their own. And then the third is some home maintenance classes on how to maintain your home and why it's so important to change your air filter and sustain the life of your HVAC and things like that. So, the willingness to partner with us is the third criteria. So if somebody meets all of the income criteria, all the debt criteria, and everything else like that, they can enter into the program, start taking classes and hours. And then when they have hit certain milestones, that's when they get to select their home. And so then they can pick which of the houses that are under construction, or plan to be under construction that they want to live in. And then we'll complete it out and they'll move in.
And then do you partner with lenders?
So, yeah, so,
Community Reinvestment Act, I would imagine they were
yeah.
pounding on your door.
So two things, we do underwrite some mortgages, so we have some mortgages on our balance sheet and collect those. But we also work with financial partners to offer below market interest rate loans. And that helps to subsidize, so really on every home that we sell, the family can afford this, but the house to build it costs this. There's a subsidy on every home. And so we try to, close that subsidy with City of Charlotte down payment assistance, below market interest loans, all of those things help to close that subsidy gap. Yeah.
Yeah, a follow-on to the process. After someone is placed in the house, they're paying the mortgage. What happens if they decide to move, or what happens if they pay off the mortgage, stay in the house for, for the length of the mortgage and pay it off? Do they own the house outright?
Yeah.
And can they sell it themselves subsequently?
Yeah, good questions. And I'll start with the second one first. Yes, if they pay off the mortgage, it is fully theirs, transitions to them. And, while giving keys at the beginning of the mortgage is a really valuable and meaningful thing. More meaningful is every year and a half, we host a mortgage burning ceremony. We have about 50 families a year at this point that are paying off their mortgages. And so we'll have a mortgage burning ceremony and celebrate with those families that have paid off their mortgages, right? It's really great. It's everybody's, your first American dream is to own a home. Your second American dream is to pay off your home, right? So we have 50 families a year right now that are paying off their homes, which is great. But to your question on if they want to move, absolutely. We're not trying to tie any, tie anybody. They want to move to Tennessee. They got family there. They want to put their house on the market. So what we do is when we sell them the house, we deed restrict it, that we have a first right of purchase to buy it back. And what that means is when they want to sell, they just call us first, and they don't need to do any repairs. They don't need to go get a real estate agent or anything else like that. Call us first. We'll come in, we'll assess the state of the house. We'll look at the market comps, and we'll make them an offer. If they don't like that offer, they can go hire a real estate agent and do what they need to get a market offer. But most of the families, we're, as you might imagine, pretty generous in our sales prices. So we will buy the house back. and then we'll go in and do some rehab on it, and then we'll resell it to another family. And so our goal is to try and keep as much of that as we can in inventory. We can't always, land appreciation is a little bit unpredictable these days. So, you know, we did have a house in Optimus Park, where the Carter project had been. That came back to us, they called us and asked if we wanted to buy it. The house is, you know, likely a tear down, but they wanted $400 and some thousand for that house. And they're gonna be able to get it from a developer that's gonna tear it down and build it up. But that's two houses for us. We couldn't justify buying one back when we could go out and build two for that. We'll go back here, I'll come back.
I was just going to ask, families are a primary focus of the work. What about individuals? How is that?
Yeah, so when I say family, I define family as inclusively as you can, you know, any way that you can design a family, that's what I mean. So it kind of ties back to the opening core values when I was talking about our faith-inspired inclusion. When we use family to mean every iteration of a family. Single, double, multiple, you know, whatever. So we're wildly inclusive but that's just a phrase.
Does that include a single person with no partner or no?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yep, absolutely. If they meet the financial criteria and have a need for housing, then absolutely they can apply.
What is your single greatest need out of dollars, land, volunteers, people that need homes?
Yes, no. To be completely honest, it's probably always gonna be operating capital, access to capital. And in below market costs, right? So we're constantly trying to talk to the financial institutions in town about short-term loans that are below market, because as we do more developments, the whole business model has changed. You know, the Hope Springs neighborhood, we bought that land several years ago, and then, you know, we started the infrastructure a year and a half ago. We started putting walls up in March. So all of that money is going out of the organization to, you know, do all the infrastructure and everything else like that, start building everything. We haven't sold a single house there yet. Right? When in the old model, you build a house over about, you know, 4 or 5 months, and then you get your money back when you sell it. Now it takes us years because of doing neighborhoods, which is the right thing to do, and I like the neighborhoods, but it is a different business model. So access to cash and access to capital, even if it's lent capital. We're in the process in the next week, actually, I will sign on a loan that we're doing with a faith-based institution in Charlotte, where they're lending us $1 million for 3 years at 0% interest. Because we just need the cash to get the neighborhoods going, and then when we sell the homes, we'll be able to give the cash back. So those kinds of financing mechanisms, but it's access to capital is probably the biggest thing. We've got land for the next 5 years. We've got more homeowners than we can handle. We can always use more volunteers, so I'll never turn away volunteers, but we have a sufficient number of volunteers, so we're not panicked around that. It's really the only thing that slows us down is access to capital.
Two-part question for you. Tell us how the restore fits into that, what you really want in the restore, how, you know, what percentage of your budget is that? Of course, I gotta ask that. And then for Marvin, what's our next opportunity? What do you need?
So on the restore, if you have not been to the restore lately, we invite you to come by. We have 7 in our footprint. The biggest one is the one on Wendover. Anybody ever gone to the one? Yes, excellent, thank you. There's also one on Wilkinson, one in Pineville, and then we've got Cornelius, Mooresville, Gastonia, Statesville. So we've got them all over the place, no excuse. Really, the ideal kind of contributions there are gently used furniture, right? And so we can't resell something that's broken. We can't resell something that is too damaged. But gently used furniture we can resell all the time. People find major finds, and I had a friend just yesterday was bragging about a brand new pine table that she got for her lake house that apparently we way underpriced. So there's always some of those, always a good find. We can take lighting, all that kind of stuff. One of the things that not everybody knows we can do is we have a decon team where we will come in and we will deconstruct your kitchen. So let's say you want to remodel your kitchen. We will come in, we will carefully deconstruct it. We will take your cabinets, your countertop, any of the appliances you don't need. We'll take all of that and we will reassemble it back in the restore and sell it to somebody else that is, mostly we're selling it to folks that, small landlords that have a unit that they're trying to flip, or somebody that's trying to convert a room over the garage into a kitchen or a kitchenette or whatever. But we resell those cabinets where a lot of contractors will come and just, destroy them and take them out and get them out, and they will charge you for that. We will actually come pick them up for free, and you get a tax deduction. So it's like a win-win. But more materials. The other thing that we're expanding our partnerships with companies also. So if you have an idea or a thought on a company that has excess inventory, we can take excess inventory. They're trying to get stuff off the shelves so they can get the new season of stuff on. We'll take brand new stuff that hasn't sold. And so we're expanding our relationships in that area.
I was gonna ask you to talk about the other two legs. We talked a lot about new build, but the critical home repair and the financial education part of Habitat.
It's like you set me
I
up.
might.
How are we doing on time? Okay, so real quick, we do critical home repair. Again, you all were great supporters of the critical home repair program through your Easter offering, so thank you for that. But we work with families that own their homes, that have deferred maintenance on their home, mostly seniors. Mostly have, been able to care for their home until they got into a low fixed income environment. And the cost of repairs in a post-COVID environment has skyrocketed. And so we go in and we assess the house and we will repair it and return it to a safe and decent place to live so that somebody can age in place. We know that that's healthier for the individual or individuals. We also know it's healthier for the neighborhood. And so big commitment to doing this. We'll do about 150 of those this year. And those are about $52,000 projects every time we go in and do an assessment. We're looking at the major systems, the roof, the electrical, the plumbing. We're looking at the foundations. Lots and lots of foundation work is being done now. There's a lot of homes that were built 50 years ago where the foundation is deteriorating. We also look for lead and asbestos if needed, that kind of thing. So a great ministry. I love this work, and the ability to keep people in their homes is such a privilege. And then financial education is a huge piece of what we're really expanding. It used to be the Habitat model was that once you got accepted into the program, then you started your financial education. And a couple of years ago, we had a couple of nonprofits come to us and say, you guys are really good at financial education, but you're only sharing it with this small group of people that are approved into your program. Could you flip it? Could you do financial education before the application? And we said, well, that's a brilliant idea. Why didn't we come up with that? And so we did that. And so now we'll work with somewhere between 400 and 500 families on how to get mortgage ready, whether they buy through us or buy through the financial markets. And so you can now come to Habitat for Financial Education before you ever apply. And it expands the number of families that we're able to work with, and really an important part of what we do. We also do a lot more around advocacy. We recognize we cannot build our way out of this housing crisis. And so we really need to be intentional about looking at what are the policies that are hindering the ability to build more units. We celebrate that Charlotte is economically thriving and we have 157 people moving here a day. We are not building housing to house 157 people a day. And so we've got to think about what regulatory changes do we need at the local, state, and federal level to be able to build more units, get people into their homes, help them stay in their homes. The cost of property taxes and homeowners insurance, all of that can price somebody out. So they've been in their home and they've really been successful, but then all of a sudden the costs that we can't control start to skyrocket. So we really want to be an active voice in keeping people in their homes and being able to thrive as a homeowner. So we build new homes, we repair homes, we provide financial education, and we're using our voice more and more for advocacy. So I'm sensitive to time and needing to let you go. So I'm going to have Marlon answer Jean's question around when are the next volunteer days?
We work in November 22nd. We have a great need for volunteers. Our other days are pretty much full, which is wonderful thing to have happened, because that hadn't happened in years. But to answer a couple other questions, we built, this is our 38th house as a group. 35 of our original homeowners still live in their houses. The others were sold back to Habitat, they rehabbed them and resold them. We have built for a single man, we have built for a single woman, we have built for a man who had joint custody of children. We've built for families up to 5 children, we've built 3 to 5 bedroom houses over the years, all over Charlotte, and, what else?
That's it. So I'm gonna,
I was just gonna say, Marvel, will you remind people how to sign up?
Yeah, it'll be in e-news in the next week or two. We are having a home dedication. On our last work day up at the Meta, up at Hook Springs at 12:30 on December 6th. All of this will be in e-news, and it's also, if you go to the website and look under local outreach, we should be the first one under there. Call me, email me anytime. Happy to answer and bring in.
so, I thought, to close, I might offer to pray out loud if you would. Holy Creator, we are so thankful for this day and the opportunities that it brings each of us. Guide us as we are in this space and to take this energy out into the world. Help equip us to identify our gifts and our talents and how they could be our work and how our work can be a visible sign of love and a tribute to you. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all.
Marlon was the person to get me to.
That's